How's it going, everybody? And welcome back for another installment of Tech Support Thursday. I know it's a Friday and it's getting late on a Friday, but this last week I had been on PTO, so I decided that I've been barely in front of the computer. So um, it's one of those things where sometimes you just need to completely disconnect, and that's exactly what I did for this past week. So good stuff. So what I want to do is I want to kind of pick up where I left off on the last installment that we did a little bit ago. So what I'm going to go do is what we normally do: go through some of the comments on the channel, and then provide information. Answer them. Sometimes I respond to them. Sometimes I don't. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get this party started. So personally, I still prefer SD-WAN 7. Personally, I still prefer the CLI template because in GUI template, you still need to put the necessary details like system IP and WAN IP of your vEdge. In CLI template, you can create one in your notepad. And so what this person is referring to is the ability of sort of scripting it through Notepad, which I do agree. However, it's been a minute since I've touched SD-WAN, like a couple of years, I think, since I did that series. And what you end up getting with that is you have a CLI mode, and this is 18.4, I think. Yeah, 18.4 is the last version of SD-WAN that I played with. So when you are working with that, you can keep it in CLI mode, but the moment you start using templates, you need to, I think they call it GUI mode. So you can then flip to GUI, and then you're literally using a bunch of templates to deploy the config that you want to roll out. So, and as far as I know, you can go back and forth between GUI and CLI, I think. Because you can do a CLI template to initially stand up the vEdge, but then once you get it added to vManage, then it makes more sense to do GUI. I'm trying to think back to when I did this. So, that's essentially what I would recommend you do if you're going through and doing all this stuff. So, it really depends on the person and the situation, but as you can see, it's one of those things where there are benefits to both in some cases. Looking forward to the series. Got DCNM to work inside of EVE-NG just fine, but had issues with Nexus Dashboard. Major latency issues when discovering the leaves and spines. So, for that series that I just released, I work with a lot with Nexus Dashboard, and my take on the situation is this. Normally, I only recommend one server for any type of scenario that you're going through, but in the event that you're going to need to use external controllers of some type, whether that's Nexus Dashboard, DCNM, or whatever the case might be, I do know that at some point in the near future, Cisco is going to release the DNA Center virtual image. I've seen some smattering of stuff coming out online about that getting close to being released. So I'm also patiently waiting for the Cat 9KV to come out so that we can. I'd love to be able to dive into that and learn how it works and stuff like that. So, but anyway, this is one of those situations where you would need to have two servers. So one server that could deploy OVAs, so an actual virtual machine. So you install an ESXi on it, get that running, and then you can deploy your OVAs from that. And then another server that you would deploy Eve bare metal. I do not believe in installing Eve as a virtual machine and then try to do nested virtualization inside of it. I don't believe that's a good idea. So at least if you're going to do anything big, if you're going to be working with Nexus 9Ks, if you're going to be doing anything that's going to require like an SD-WAN or something like that, I don't believe that's a good direction to go in when you're trying to get this stuff up and running. So my opinion on it is if you can afford to do it and you have the ability to support it, two servers. They can be the exact same model, right? one a decent amount of CPU, a decent amount of RAM. What I mean by decent amount of memory, I'm talking probably 250 gigs on average is what I think is a good amount, because that'll let you run pretty big topologies and fairly large OVAs, virtual machines, stuff like that, without you having to be sacrificing capabilities and stuff like that. Um, so that's my take on it. I have two. I technically have four running currently. I've got one that does um, just straight ESXi. As a matter of fact, I'll show you to you really quick. Here I am. I'm in the process of working on a ESX or a VMware series for NSXT. I'll be showing you guys that here soon. But I've always got something in my back pocket that I'm working on. So we have that, and then I have other servers that are running Eve. I've got three of them actually running right now. Two that are Eve Pro and one is Eve Community. And the goal is one is dedicated to a customer deployment I'm working on. I'm working on it for a long period of time. That other engineers that I'm working with on the same project are leveraging. So it's a lab server that we've stood up. I'm hosting it out of my home lab. And then I've got other servers that I've got that are completely disconnected from that are for like development of new content that I want to do on YouTube and things like that. So there's that. So to the point of this person's comment, if you have the means and the capability of taking a server, buying two of them, deploying one as an ESXi host and the other one as an Eve bare metal server, that is what I would recommend you go do. This way here, when you're going through and you're playing with stuff, you can deploy the OVA directly to ESXi as if it would be a real deployment, and then you could also deploy your Eve server and then run your Nexus 9Ks inside of Eve bare metal, and it'll give you much more functionality than it would otherwise. So that's what I would recommend you go do. So this way here, you're not waiting a ton of time for discovery and stuff like that. That's how I deployed my lab in this series. So just some info in case you guys are curious on how that works. After a long time, so essentially this person is just commenting on the fact that it's been a while since I've released any content. Hi Rob, thanks is not enough for educating us for those years. I had a deployment of ND Nexus Dashboard in one of my projects, waiting for upcoming videos of the series. Thanks once again, bro. You're welcome. So this is adding switches to the DC1 VXLAN fabric. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, go to the Cisco Data Center playlist that I created, and you'll be able to watch. I've got them in order. There's a total of 12 videos. The dynamics of creating a port channel through the dashboard are interesting, but I continue with the CLI much faster. I agree with you. It is much faster to configure a port channel through the dashboard. However, I can't tell you how many times I've worked on a DCNM or a Nexus dashboard deployment, whether I'm standing it up for the first time or the customer's got it deployed, and my job is I'm tasked with helping the customer do something that they don't know how to do. Ironically, customers have a level of turnover regardless of what's going on, and a lot of times I will work with a person that's new to the organization, and I will have to work with them to help them understand how to configure something. It could be something very simple like creating a port channel between a Nexus switch and a Catalyst switch, or it could be creating a VPC. They need to add a VPC to something, and I can help them create a VPC interface on a pair of Nexus 9Ks and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, for me, it's just a matter of what are the major things that I would have to know how to do on a daily basis when it comes to Nexus Dashboard, and that's just one of them. So there's that. Let me scroll up here a little bit. Hi, is it possible to install NDFC for the labs without a license? Yes. There is licensing available to Nexus Dashboard. However, my understanding is it's not licensing directly to it, but don't quote me on that. I don't know for sure. What I do know is that you have the Nexus 9KV and you deploy it, or you have your Nexus 9Ks, whether it's a 93180, a 93108, a 9336, a 9364. There's a whole bunch of different Nexus 9K models out there, and some are some are like purpose built for the leaf layer, like 93180s, and then you have your spine layer, which is more like your 9336, 9364, where they've got 100 gig interfaces, and you've only got so many of them. So between your leaf and your spine, you're going to want to be doing 100 gig if you can, and that would be what you would want to roll with. So licensing, I believe, goes at the switch level because that's where you really need the capability to work. But I don't know what licensing or anything like that would be for Nexus Dashboard. That's not something I deal with on a regular basis. That's more of like a pre-sales question. If you're a sales engineer, that's what you would end up looking into. But so you can deploy, like, literally. I didn't. There's when I did the series, I didn't cover anything that, or I didn't do anything that requires something special for me to do something. Now, for example, the VMware NSXT series I'm about to go do, I'm standing up a lab right now to go through and just double check to make sure what I want to show you guys is going to work the way I expect it to, and I'll talk about that here towards the end of the video just so you guys know what I'm working on. So, the as far as I know, the licensing is if something requires a license for you to do the job, to make something work, I'll make mention of that and say, okay, in order for this to work, you need this thing there. If you don't, then you won't be able to make this thing work. Simple as that. I try to be as transparent and as open and honest as I can with you guys. So there's obviously some things that I can't be, but specifically like, how or what the customer was, or anything that would be, I'll mention I did this on a customer deployment, and I'll walk you through what it is that I did, but not necessarily who the customer was or anything like that, because you guys don't care. You really don't. And if you did, I wouldn't tell you anyway, because that's a customer confidentiality thing. So, so to get this up and running, you only need a virtual machine with 16 vCPUs. NDFC doesn't require any additional 16 vCPUs. So you've got the OVA deployment, and as far as I know, Nexus Dashboard was, I forget exactly how many. I can pop onto Google real quick. Nexus Dashboard Fabric Controller Deployment Guide. No, Installation Guide. As far as I know it, and let's see here. System requirements. Okay, let me bring this over real quick just to answer the question that was presented. So this is a pretty new, it's not the latest and greatest version, but it's pretty close to it. So for the Fabric Controller, you're going to need, for the virtual node, the app OVA, which is what you want to deploy, 16 CPUs, 64 gigs of RAM. That's what you're going to need to roll it out with. If you have these, you're in good shape. You shouldn't need anything more than that, and you'll be in really good shape. So that should get you to the point you need to be in, and all that good stuff that goes along with it. It is a heavy virtual machine, and you do need to, in a production deployment, you would need to deploy it in clusters of 3. So you would need 3 dedicated ESXi hosts that you would have 16 vCPUs and 64 gigs of RAM available to you. So just keep that in mind. But you can look up the installation guide and look at what is needed. I mean, Cisco's pretty transparent about that type of stuff. So, all right. Let me continue here. So, somebody commenting on the fact that I did a deep dive on MPLS Layer 3 VPNs at some point in time. So I'm getting a lot of good positive feedback on Enterprise Lab 1 overview and how that goes. So you're welcome from US to Egypt. a very old video on basic network design. So you are welcome. And then, okay, so is that CML or EVE-NG? So, I suppose it could be hard to tell sometimes. So I'm going to take a minute here and talk about this a little bit. So EVE-NG, don't waste your time with CML. So let me clarify my comment there. The reason why I go into that, and I literally give the specifics. So I'm actually kind of glad this person asked the question the way that they did, because it gave me an opportunity to answer the question specifically. So this is actually kind of funny. So there's a customer project that I'm working on once I go back to work on Monday from PTO, where there's an internal team that's working on this customer's project, and we were discussing some different options for labbing up what is needed in order for this customer's project to go smoothly, because it's a lot of routing. It's like, I'm trying to think back how many engineers are on it. There's quite a few of us. I think there's a half a dozen of us on the project, and every one of us is at least a single CCIE. There isn't anybody on the project that doesn't have an IE and route switch or some other track that heavily involves routing. We're all really strong in routing and switching. So, and for on purpose, because there's a lot of stuff that we need to be aware of. You would never, don't take this the wrong way for anybody that doesn't have a CCIE, but there are certain projects out there that require that have a lot of routing pieces going on that you simply wouldn't attach a CCNA level engineer or somebody that's got a CCNA certification. You wouldn't attach them solely to this project, because they wouldn't have the technical understanding in order to understand what's going on. So, not to say that you couldn't have a CCNA certified engineer on the project with higher level certified people like myself and other CCIEs that I work with, but you wouldn't put that person on by themselves. It just doesn't make sense. However, there are other engineers that are working on the project that don't have CCIEs, and the benefit to that is they get to work with us, dive into the configuration, and then what we're doing as a whole is trying to bring up engineers that are like have a CCNA working on CCNP or have an NP or working on their IE. We bring them in, and then our goal is to help level them up. Because at the end of the day, let's say there's 25 CCIEs that work for the company that I work for, and you want to go and add more to your list of technical resources. Well, there's only one real way to take somebody from the CCNA level and bring them to the CCIE level, and that is to invest time into them. If other CCIEs back before I had mine didn't take the time to create content or answer questions and stuff like that, put a certain amount of effort into other folks. There's some folks in the IT community, specifically in network engineering, that have the mindset of once you reach the technical top certification, CCIE, JNCIE, VCDX, MCSC, whatever the certification might be. Once you get there, there's not a lot of us, right? So what they end up doing is you just need to simply send the elevator back down. And what that simply means is you send the elevator back down empty, so that people that are interested in getting those certifications or having that same level of understanding can get on the elevator, and then you can, you encourage them to work towards their goal, and then if they have questions or need to bring something up or validate their understanding of something, that's your job. So even though I don't technically get paid to teach anybody anymore, it's in my best interest to pass on information and knowledge, answer questions, things like that, to other engineers that are working on getting their IEs, so that they can get it. And the more people you have at a higher level of understanding, technically the easier the work gets, because you just have more smart people joining these projects, and they go that much more smooth. So that's really the driving factor for a lot of this stuff. So what ended up happening was the group of us got together and we were talking about lab solutions. What can we do to test this out? So I said, okay, one of the trying to think of a good way to put it. Like, I guess you could say the manager of the team. He was looking at cloud solutions, but they were really, really expensive. And so I put my 2 cents in there. I said, or we go out and we buy a couple dedicated lab servers, we install Eve on it, and then we can go through and stand this up, get it working. We can have dedicated hardware resources. You can run 30, 40, 50 nodes in it, and you're not worried about anything. Let's come at this in a more efficient manner. He got some clarifying information from me. He pulled the trigger on a server. It got delivered to his house. He and I worked on getting it stood up. We got it stood up. Everything's operational, and we're in a good spot right now. So this is where this really came into play, because it allows us to do things that CML doesn't do. Now, I don't know CML that well, other than having a lab license for it. I pay the $200 a year, I think it is. Pay the $200 a year for access to the instances so that I can have the latest versions of code. And a lot of this stuff I can pull down from Cisco's website directly because I have access to it. So essentially the main reason for going Eve over CML is there's no node limit, right? You can have more than 20 nodes. You can install it bare metal. I don't know if you can install CML bare metal. That I don't know. I can test a very, very large topologies. As a matter of fact, I have a couple of customer topologies that I've rolled out where I've had to stand up two VXLAN fabrics, do EVPN multi-site between the two, and then have additional capabilities like connecting to Palo firewalls and stuff like that to test different capabilities and scenarios, failover testing, stuff like that. And that's kind of the level of effort my customers have come to expect from us. So we put in the time, we put in the effort to validate configurations, put together what it is that's going to end up happening. We do a lot of, we call it blast radius testing. And if you don't know what that means, is it's simply a way for anybody that's interested in diving into a deployment of some type where the changes that we're suggesting to the customer and where we're suggesting making those changes can have a very far-reaching impact, and the customer is just cautious on those config changes and wants to make sure that before we make those config changes, can we do testing of I do a lot of policy-based routing. Surprise, you might laugh at it or think it's interesting, but I do a lot of PBR testing for customer-specific requests, where I use PBR to do certain routing designs to send traffic a certain path, because I don't want to deploy something and then affect a whole bunch of end users, and then stuff like that. It's better off to do something small first, see what the impact is, and then if everything goes the way we expect it to, then no harm, no foul. We can go ahead and pull the trigger on the change. So that's one of those things where you run into scenarios where you just got to be cognizant of what it is that you're doing. What is the impact? This actually goes back a long time ago, back when I first started doing stuff on YouTube, where I made mention where, part of being an expert in a particular field is knowing what the impact of something is. Not just knowing how to configure a particular feature on a router or a firewall. It's, if I configure this, what is the impact on the network? That is, I can look at a network diagram of any type, any size or shape, and then if I look at the config, even if I only look at part of the config, I can start to visualize how this network is operating. And that's really where being able to look at, for example, it's like an architect that does home builds. You can have the blueprints in front of you. A lot of people don't know how to read a blueprint for a house. But if you were to take that blueprint for somebody that knows how to read it, they can look at it, and in their head, they can visualize the house getting constructed as they start reading through the blueprint. I look at networking in the exact same way. I can look at a config and I can go, oh, okay, you've got virtualization there, you got some OSPF there, you got some BGP there, you got redistribution here. So I can start to visualize the flow of the packet. if you will. And that's really helpful for me because then I can say, oh, wait, hold on a second. If we got this access list here, we're calling a prefix list here, so this route will get passed, but this one won't. You can start to see how, if you've ever seen the movie Hackers from like '96 with Angelina Jolie, you'll know what I'm talking about, where they've got those vertical building looking things, and there you can see the camera panning through. I see the network the exact same way. That's how I'm able to visualize it. But that goes to the point where I know how the config works. So, with that being said, so the last comment here is where are you mounted your lab? Can you tell us the server specifications? So for the two Dell servers that I have two R810s, 4x10 core E7 4870s, and 256 gigs of RAM, and I installed Eve bare metal. So it gives me a lot of flexibility to do all the deployment types that I want to do, and that's really where the rubber meets the road for me in terms of the operations. So it's a very cool capability and feature, knowing that you can do exactly what it is that you're intending to do. So for me, it's a matter of how do I test out a capability, and this is how I do it. Now, going back to what I was talking about a minute ago when it came to the stuff that I'm working on currently. So the series that I'm working on now, I'm doing all the testing for right now, meaning I'm going through the configuration specifics for ESXi, getting the data center set up for NSXT, and testing all the capabilities out. Or not the capabilities, but I'm confident in my capabilities to show you guys how to get all the different features and capabilities of NSXT working. What I'm focusing on now is if we want to do an NSXT upgrade, how long does that take? What does that process look like? Because it does take some time to do an NSXT upgrade and all that type of stuff that goes along with it. So beyond those things, the other thing that I want to make sure that I understand is when I do the upgrade from say 6.7 to 7.0, because that's one of the things we're going to have to go do, is do that. Then I want to deploy a new vCenter. I want to upgrade from vCenter 7 to vCenter 8. And there's going to be a progression. Upgrade to your ESXi 6 host, because vCenter 8 doesn't support ESXi 6 anymore, because 6.7 is no longer supported. Upgrade that. And then once I have that upgraded, then I'll be able to deploy vCenter 8. And once I have vCenter 8 deployed, I want to use LCM, Lifecycle Manager, to upgrade all of my ESXi 7 hosts to ESXi 8. And then I want to upgrade NSXT. I'll do a 3.1 to 3.2 upgrade, and then I want to do a 3.2 to 4.0 upgrade. And then that'll get us fully deployed, the latest and greatest NSX4 to ESXi 8, all the bells and whistles that go along with that. So it is a process to get to that point, but it's one of those things where as you're going through and doing it, it's something that you should know as an engineer. Now, with that being said, for those of you studying for your VCP, the new VCP is out for NSX4. It has been out for a little bit now. I'm waiting to go back to work so that I can go ahead and pull the trigger on taking the test and have that out of the way. Then once that's out of the way, then I've taken the VCIX exams. I've taken the VCAP deploy and the VCAP design. I've taken both of those. I just need to take the new VCP for NSX4. I need to take that one. So it's a VCP NSX to upgrade my 2021 to 2023. And then once I upgrade my VCP to 2023, that will let me, that'll grant me the VCIX and network virtualization. So I'm currently waiting on that to drop. I'm sorry. I'm waiting on to take the test for that so that I can go ahead and focus on getting the certification out of the way so that I'm in good shape there. With that being said, there's really not a whole lot. I'm using the series that I'm recording, going to be recording and testing for as a refresher for me. Not that I really need it. I know NSX pretty well at this point. I can go through and deploy everything. And then for those of you that are interested in passing your VCP or your VCIX, this will be a good launching point for that, because I'll be able to go into the details of how all that stuff works. So it's pretty cool stuff in terms of the day-to-day stuff. It's just one of those things where it takes a little bit to do the demos and stuff like that. And it's going to be kind of a lengthy series, because we're going to be I'm going to be demoing things for you guys that you normally wouldn't be able to demo if you don't have Enterprise Plus licensing for NSXT. So because the limited export, the LE version of NSX doesn't support VPNs. So you won't be able to do layer 2 VPN, you won't be able to do IPsec VPN. So you'll end up having to, and you're going to be, when you get to the VCIX or get to the VCAP deploy exam, you will have to know how to work with IPsec VPNs inside of NSX. So if you don't know how that works, you'll have to learn about it. So it's not hard. What they test you on inside of the VCAP deploy exam for NSX for the VPNs, it's not difficult. You just have to know how they work. So, and if you do, you'll be able to figure out what it is that they're looking for, and then you'll be able to check that box when it comes to that task. I know what they test you on, but if you want to learn about it, you're gonna have to go through the series, and I'll walk you through the config. It's pretty straightforward. So, and there was a question that was presented to me. Am I planning on doing a VCAP deploy specific like lab walkthrough, if you will, like I did for Enterprise? And the answer to that is no. The VCAP deploy exam is going to be, or a walkthrough that I'm going to do. All the videos that I'm going to plan on walking through is going to be start off as a standing up the lab. I'm going to walk you through on how to deploy all the different capabilities and features of a data center. We'll do VCP DCV. We'll do the data center virtualization for 6.7. We'll do 7.0 vCenter. We'll get everything stood up there. We have to deploy a full data center first. Then we can add NSXT to it. And then once that's deployed, we'll go through and look at all the different capabilities of NSXT. Once NSXT is knocked out and good to go, we'll look at adding a second location. So we'll do federations. We'll do IPsec VPN, layer 2 VPN, all that cool stuff that goes along with it. We'll get it fully deployed operationally. Everything will work the way we expect it to. Then we'll be able to take it to the next step. We'll be able to upgrade our 6.7 host to 7.0. We'll be able to take and upgrade our ESXi hosts. We'll then do a vCenter upgrade from 7 to 8. We'll upgrade our hosts from 7 to 8. We'll do a NSXT upgrades, 3.1 to 3.2, 3.2 to 4.0. We're going to go through all those processes in order for this to work the way we expect it. So that's a lot to cover. And it's not going to be just a couple of videos. It's going to be several. So with that being said, I want to thank you guys for stopping by and hanging out with me in this video. And until next time, guys, take it easy.